Welcome to a new time. Welcome to a new era.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Feel the wrath of the Pythons. You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania. This is where the power lies.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me and he's not even going to try.
It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done.
Welcome everyone to Legends and Champions for this week. Andy here, coming to you from the United Kingdom, but not from my hometown. I'm in a hotel in Reading, just on the southeast of England. We're also in the middle of a heat wave. It's extremely hot. Doesn't happen very often. Most of what we do over here is rain, but it is baking, and I'm sweating like no man's business. Not that you want to see, you've just got to imagine a big man sweating his something's off. But there you go. Coming up this week on Legends, we're going to be going back to 1992 to the Sheffield Arena. It's going to be talking all about the UK Rampage that took place on Sky Movies Plus. We're going to be breaking the card down, giving you some insights into that, and letting you know what next week's topic is going to be about. Now, don't forget, you can get in contact with us throughout the week and throughout the days, the weeks, the months, the years, at Celebrate Wrestling on Facebook. All you need to do is search for Celebrate Wrestling, answer some questions, because I say it every week, that's what Meta tells us we have to do, and Mike will let you in, and then you can be a part of the conversation. You can speak to me and Stefanos and Mitch, Dimitri and Mike and everybody else, including the wonderful, the legendary Joe Aguinaldo, daily. You know, we talk about what happened on Raw, what happened on NXT, what happened on SmackDown, on Dynamite, on Collision, on Impact, on the pay-per-view. You can do your yay boo for Mike's show. You can find out what we're talking about. You can find out what Mitch and Dimitri are talking about. You can have conversations yourself, people. It's one of those things. It's brilliant. It's the best community you can be a part of. And if you'd like to continue to be a part of the community, all you need to do is buy a t-shirt, available now on Celebrate Wrestling on Facebook. You can get the lowest special, the Celebrate Wrestling t-shirt, or you could become part of the Greek World Order and support the guys over at ACT. They are Canadian made, they are Canadian produced, best in the world, and you can get them for a limited time right now at Celebrate Wrestling. All right, coming up this week on the podcast feed, obviously you've got us on Saturday. You're going to have Mitch and Dimitri with the alternate commentary table. And then you will have Mr. Maguire back with Mr. Meltzer talking all about the week that was in professional wrestling. At Maguire on Wrestling comes to you free of charge each and every week right here on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. And, you know, I was talking to Joe Aguinaldo the other day, and you know, we did our last week's show, which was, you know, all about, what was it all about? Monday Night Raw Go show. The Raw after WrestleMania. I forgot. It's been one of those weeks. You know, I was talking to Joe, and we've done, 5 TSCs back in the day, and this is episode 28 now of Legends. And it feels like we've come home. You know, it really does feel like we've come home. It's a great community, and love being a part of Celebrate, and the guys are absolutely fantastic. But you can be a part of it, and please do get involved, whether or not you listen to my show, or you listen to ACT, or you listen to Mike, whoever. Just listen to what you want, but enjoy it. But please spread the word. Spread the word about Celebrate Wrestling, because then we can go up that algorithm and we can bring you what you need. Right, okay, let's go to break. When we come back, Stefanos and I will be talking all about the UK Rampage 1992. I'll see you after this.
The alternate commentary table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing. Right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it. We hate it. The alternate commentary table, ACT. Download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts.
Sure. All right, welcome back to Legends and Champions for this week. Andy, coming to you from the Premier Inn Hotel in Reading. It's a very hot, very, very, very hot day. Joining me is Stefano. Stefano, how you doing, good boy? Good boy? Good man? Good? What? I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good.
I'm not.
You never are.
Well, yeah, true. So that is actually that is a fairly valid point. You know, I've been up since 5, did a 3-hour drive, and it's been 26 in the southeast. It's not nice.
Yeah, well, I am in the southeast. It has been quite warm, isn't it?
But I come from the beach. I come from the sea. We don't get this hot. This isn't normal.
Yeah, it's only going to get worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks for that. I did make the mistake though, because I'm in the hotel and we're recording this in the evening, and I did make the mistake of ordering an Uber Eats. You know, other delivery services are available, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I ordered it, and when you're away and you think, right, I'm going to order something, and I don't know what I'm going to order, but you end up ordering a Chinese, right? So you get a Chinese, and it gets delivered. And you go down to the bar and you have a couple of beers, and that's what you do while you're waiting for the Uber Eats to turn up. And then you realise that you've ordered the hottest bloody curry available, and you have no drink in the room. I've literally been sat here going through about 4 or 5 cups of cold water because this curry was stupidly hot, and already hot. I think I've lost about 12 stone in body weight. Which, not bad thing, but anyway, I'm digressing.
I sort of get what you mean. I tell you what, do you know what? I've never ever been like much of a Chinese food fan, like Chinese takeaways. Just hear me out, right? Literally, pretty much almost any relationship I've ever been in, even my parents and whatnot, everyone loves the Chinese. I never used to like it. Years and years ago, right? But I tell you what, the last few months, right, I've every now and again been craving the Chinese, and I've been having the Chinese like with my partner and that, and I start getting cravings for Chinese food now. It's a bit weird.
Welcome to the dark side. Sweet and sour chicken, Cantonese style, spring roll, prawn crackers, curry. Oh, yeah, amazing. Anyway, we digress. I'm kind of delaying because one of the things that we've been doing on this show quite recently is kind of talking about something that has happened within the modern wrestling world before we hit the retro topic. And something's kind of come up that you shared it to the hosts, and it's now been all over, social media. Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff releasing some sort of NWO style video. We're back. The third guy is coming out. There is a lot of people going, why? Please just retire. Me personally, and I think I said this in the host chat, for me personally, it's a new podcast and the third man is Conrad Thompson. But what's your take on it? Because you flat out disagreed with me in the host chat. But then, good sir, you never backed it up. Why? So now is your chance.
Oh, I didn't back it up because I didn't really have anything else to add to it at the time.
Oh, okay. Well, that's killed that conversation, isn't it?
The reason why I flat out just disagreed about it being a podcast is because who cares? If it's a podcast, who really cares? Like, Conrad and Bischoff do their own podcast anyway together. They do Bischoff's podcast anyway. Yeah. Having Hogan, and I was always a Hulkamaniac, and I'll always forever be a Hulkamaniac. I just don't agree with the kind of person Hogan's become. I don't think having Hogan doing a podcast there's any point to it, because the majority of the wrestling fan base are going to think that everything that comes out of his mouth is complete BS. So I don't see the point, and I think it would be very, very underwhelming. I'm thinking it's something different, maybe that we're not expecting. There are actually some people that I've seen through comments and that actually think that maybe they're starting their own promotion, and the third person could actually potentially be Vince, because there's a lot of talk and speculation that's been going on for months now, probably about a year nearly now, about Vince starting a different wrestling promotion.
I don't think, I've heard those rumours as well.
Yeah.
And
it's not likely, but
I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to touch Vince, right? And we're not going to go into it. All right, it's well documented what's going on. We're not going to go into it. That's the decision that we all made as part of the hosting. We're not going to go into it. But yes, no one in their right.
This is Hogan we're talking about.
Yeah, no one in their right mind. Yeah, exactly, Hogan we're talking. I don't know. I mean, if they did do a podcast, it could be the basis for a really good drinking game.
And the first $1 million question is clearly have down a shot anytime that Hogan mentions body slamming Andre the Giant for WrestleMania 3. Yes.
Down another shot every time he increases the attendance at the Pontiac Silverdome. Down another shot every time he says brother.
Yeah. and everyone gets completely paralytic when anytime he speaks absolute nonsense. So it's and also, to be fair, as we know, Bischoff's mantra is always controversy creates cash. That's another reason why I think but I don't think it'll be a podcast. But if it is, it's going to be so underwhelming that if that's what it turns out to be. But I have to say, watching that video though, I'll say this: watching that little video, it was a nice little throwback to the NWO days, which it's a bit of fun. Hogan seems so much more comfortable as Hollywood than he does as real American Hogan, especially nowadays. I think, considering the whole controversy surrounding him and the fact that he gets booed and whatnot. Now, if I was him, I would just spend the rest of his career, so to speak, as Hollywood and heal it. Why not?
I love that. The fact that we always record, breaking the fourth wall here. We record this on video, right? But we only ever release the audio. Stephanie's just sat there and done the inverted commas every time he's mentioned Hogan being Hollywood or heel. It's as if to say, I'm doing it, but you can't see it. You can't see me. Oh, Jesus. Right. I'm sorry now. Turn off. We are going to get to the show. Right, let's go. Oh, this is going to be a long one. Right, 1992, following WrestleMania 8, the UK was home to Sky Movies Plus. It was home to a burgeoning relationship between the World Wrestling Federation and Sky TV. And we'd already come off the Battle Royal at the Albert Hall in 1991. We'd come off the UK Rampage of 1991. But now the Sheffield Arena, home of the UK Gladiators, for this year, see, there's the link, was the home for the UK Rampage 1992. Now, we watched this on the WWE Vault. And before we kind of get into the pay-per-view, right, because it was for those of you who don't know, Sky Movies Plus back in the day was and it still is, was the subscription site for Sky Television, satellite broadcasting, where it got the latest movies and blockbusters and all that type of thing. And at this point, there was only 2 channels. Now there's about 452,000 different movie channels. Most of it's on demand. But at this point, there was mainly 2. There was Sky Movies and Sky Movies Plus. They also had Sky Sports, which was their pay-per-view, their premium subscription rate to watch, football and all that type of thing. And it always surprised me why the WWF went on Sky Movies and not on Sky Sports.
At that time they did, didn't they? I still remember, I know we'd be forwarding 2 years into the future to 94. I remember that summer I was on the holiday with my grandparents, and I remember, because back then we didn't have mobile phones, I remember being on the old payphone back home to my parents, and my dad turned around and just said, "Oh, you're going to be pleased when you get back." I said, "Why's that?" He said, "I've recorded SummerSlam." And if I remember that, I think at that point that had actually transitioned onto Sky Sports by that.
That was on Sky Sports, yeah.
Yeah, and it was very strange, because back then I was kind of like, I'd have a look through the TV guide for Sky Sports, and there's like, why is there no wrestling? And then I'd be looking, see the ad come up and go, on Sky Movies, the World Wrestling Federation's UK Rampage, like that, and I'm like.
But then it was even worse. It was even weirder, wasn't it? Because every weekend on Saturday and Sunday on Sky One, which was kind of like the entertainment channel.
Yeah, it was the premium entertainment channel, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the home, and it's such a shame they never brought it back. It was the home of DJ Cat.
DJ Cat.
DJ Cat was amazing. DJ Cat was kind of like this every day after school. There was DJ Cat, and he would play the latest cartoons and play games. It was like the Thundercats and He-Man and all that type of thing was on there. And then they used to do the weekend show. But we've lost everybody by now. You know this, right? We're 11 minutes into this, and nobody's listening to this anymore. If you are, thank you. On the Saturday and Sunday, you had WWF Mania, you had the Action Zone. At 5 o'clock on a Sunday evening, you had the All-American Wrestling, you had Superstars, you had Wrestling Challenge. All of it was on Sky One. And then the PLE was on Sky Movies Plus, which just didn't make any sense.
Bizarre,
it just didn't. The event took place on April the 19th, 1992, as we said, at the Sheffield Arena. And it was a big expansion into the UK, because really, 1990, 1991, 1992 was really when we kind of started to see more of the coverage within the United Kingdom. It had had its honeymoon period. Simon Cowell was beginning to get behind the WWF Superstars, and we had the release of Slam Jam, the CD single that went to, I think, number 5. Then we had the WrestleMania album that made no sense because it said the Survivor Series, even though it was called WrestleMania.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then Slam Jam on the album was called the SummerSlam Jam. So they just needed one called the Royal Rumble. Brett did a great one called Never Been a Good Time to Say Goodbye.
Yeah. It was about his sister Diana, wasn't it? And it sort of coincided with the whole him versus British Bulldog going head to head at SummerSlam kind of thing. And it was kind of a bit like, dude, like, you're just competing against your brother-in-law. It's not that deep. Like, chill. But WWF were like Vince McMahon being like, oh no, we're going to throw money in it. Brett, you're going to get in and record this song. It
wasn't Vince. It was Simon Cowell.
Yeah, but Vince is still behind it, It's still partnership with Simon Cowell. But
Simon Cowell's the one who gave us the Teletubbies.
But to be fair, it was more. It wasn't. He didn't. Bret Hart didn't sing. He was spoken word throughout the song. He had backing singers to do that part.
He did the William Shatner. Yeah.
Yeah. Although to be fair, shout out to that album. I still remember the Macho Man Randy Savage's one on there with that epic little intro. The old Tower of Power. The Tower of Power is sweet to be sour. Funky like the monkey.
Oh, sour.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The old Macho Man. Dig it. Macho Man. That one.
Can you tell that we're avoiding getting to this event? Can you
throws out so many? Yeah, but the thing is, these are related to the event in some ways because it's from that time period. But it's still relative. that way.
Oh God! Now we're in a landscape of the World Wrestling Federation where Hogan has gone. He has left the company. There is no Hulkster. The Macho Man Randy Savage coming off that win at WrestleMania 8 in Indianapolis, Indiana, defeating the Nature Boy Ric Flair with that really controversial storyline of the photos of Miss Elizabeth all the way through WWF magazine, which I remember reading that magazine going, what? Elizabeth has been with the Nature Boy? What's going on here? But it was really groundbreaking storyline at that time in 1992 to combine, as you quite rightly said, we didn't have mobile phones, pre-internet. This was pre-social media. This was a way of mixing in all of your media publications. You're absolutely right. When you're talking about social media, man, I just had this thought in my head. If this had happened, if we'd had social media back then, we'd had that, the moment Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair mentioned to the world that they've got private photo pictures of Miss Elizabeth, there's keyboard warriors and dimwits out there that probably would have gone straight onto Google and be like, Miss Elizabeth private photos to see what they get. That would have happened if that had been. In fairness, in 1995 it happened with another former WWE diva. So it's there. Oh my God, what we're going on? We've also got the Hitman Bret Hart, who is the new Intercontinental Champion. He defeated the Hot Rod Roddy Piper at WrestleMania. No, he didn't. Roddy Piper beat. No, Bret Hart beat Bret. Who did Bret Hart beat Roddy Piper, or did Piper beat Bret Hart?
No, right. So I think Piper beat the Mountie. Bret beat Piper at WrestleMania 8 for the Intercontinental title.
That's right, because Piper went into the Royal Rumble as the Intercontinental Champion.
Best match of WrestleMania 8. That was
not exactly hard.
No. So Savage Flair just sort of cows it slightly, but that was the best match of WrestleMania 8.
The tag team division in 1992 was Money Incorporated and the Legion of Doom. The Natural Disasters were still around, but kind of coming to the end of their run. $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and Erwin R. Shyster were really kind of taking the company by storm, of course, managed by the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, and Legion of Doom were managed by Paul Ellering and Rocco. Yeah.
Do you know, I really feel Paul Ellering's had a really tough deal when it comes to WWE. It's like, the thing is as well, that guy doesn't look like he's aged at all. Like, he really doesn't. Paul Ellering doesn't look like he's aged. When he came into NXT with the Authors of Pain, I was like, oh my God, the guy's aging really, really well. Then he gets released. Then they bring him back only to release him again months later. Like, the guy seriously is having really tough deal when it comes to WWE.
You kind of take the hint though, right? You don't come back.
Yeah, well, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I just don't see the point in bringing people back if you're not going to do anything with them.
I guess everybody's got a price.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But,
DiBiase laugh. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. That was more Jim Neidhart than Ted DiBiase. The one thing about 1992, which we kind of really need to touch on, and we're not going to go into detail on it because it's been talked about a long time. We are now in the midst of the steroid trial. Business for the WWF is not good, right? Vince is in court. Hogan's been called to appear. It's been documented on the Netflix documentary, McMahon. It's been talked about before. Business is not good at the moment for the World Wrestling Federation. They are in the UK, and we are in the midst of this steroid trial. So for them to kind of get anywhere near a sellout in a domestic UK market was a major achievement for the organization at this point. And it really kind of goes to show how rabid and how it's always been, how rabid the UK fans and the European fans have been. And we saw that just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but back then it was different though, because we were starved of having, WWF over here. It was like once every few years or something, like they would do something like Rampage or whatnot, and then obviously through like the Attitude Era, we had like Capital Carnage, then we had like the Insurrections and the what was it, Rebellion?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, we were staff. So it was always going to be a big thing, a big money maker for the WWF to come over to here and do Europe. But yeah, it was a really, really difficult time. If WCW had been in the position they were in the mid to late 90s sooner during this period, I think WWF would have struggled to have recovered, because the Attitude Era wouldn't have happened at that point, because obviously the guys weren't all there at that time either.
That's a really interesting point, right? And kind of, we'll talk about the event in a second, but that's a really interesting point, because WCW in this era was broadcast on Saturday afternoons on ITV.
Yep.
Now, ITV, for those international viewers, is the second largest terrestrial commercial channel. Okay? You've got the BBC that's publicly funded, doesn't have adverts, but ITV is the largest commercially funded channel in the UK. Now, back in 1992, there was only ITV, Channel 3, and there was only 4 terrestrial channels at this point. Satellite was just beginning to take off, but we literally had that. Yeah. Now, on a Saturday afternoon, you had, bearing in mind whatever region you were in, but you had something along the lines of Knight Rider, the A-Team, WCW Worldwide, and then some sort of a game show. Yeah. Like that was your Saturday afternoon, early evening.
No.
Why didn't WCW at this point become the number one in the UK? Because they would have been killing the WWF on Sky just by domestic audience alone.
Yeah, I think star power to an extent, because prior to obviously 92, this is where Hogan's starting to get phased out a little bit. You know, he'd do his little bit in 93, and then he'll be gone, and then until he would end up going to WCW. The fact that they had that star power with, you know, what they had built through like the first WrestleManias, the rock and wrestle era of the mid 80s, through that Hulkamania, they were big stars there. But this is the period which I call the dark days of WWE, World Wrestling Federation, before the Attitude. It's where you get sort of like the end of 1991. You could tell that by WrestleMania 8 itself, you know, how much it sort of struggles. So 92, 93, 94, 95, and summer 96, it was a very, very stale, not so good period for, you know, it's still too gimmicky. Some of the gimmicks were just absolutely ridiculous. People like Mantar, for example. And yeah, it just wasn't all that good. And then obviously, you know, when you start having characters like Goldust, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Razor Ramon becoming a bigger star, Diesel becoming a bigger star, Shawn Michaels becoming more established. You still have Brett. It was suffering the fallout of the Hulkamania era fading away, and it's kind of like, what do we do now? We can't just marquee Hulk Hogan on everything like we were. And those sort of 5 years until, you know, the early indications of the Attitude Era, the Mr. McMahon character and all that, like, those are what I call the dark days of WWF. And if you know, and if WCW, I do feel they didn't take advantage of what they had. Obviously, they didn't have that collaboration with, like, you know, MTV to bring their product into all the homes. They didn't start getting, you know, celebrity guests until they started bringing people in like Rodman and you know, the other basketball players and American football players and those ones coming in a bit later on. If WCW were in a position where they'd already made a big name for themselves earlier on, they really could have taken advantage of this 5-year period.
But I think there is an argument there to say that actually, you know, WCW did have, especially over here on the international side, maybe not the US. It reminds me a lot of TNA, like the earlier TNA days, right? over here in the UK, it was huge. You know, it would sell out the O2 Arena, it would sell out Wembley Arena, it would sell out the Hydro in Glasgow. It would sell out when it did the UK tours, right? And it was one of the highest rated weekly shows on Challenge. And it didn't do that over domestically in the US, but it did over here in the UK, and they capitalized on that. And you've seen as well with WCW at that 1993 live event that's up on the WCW Vault on YouTube, that it sold out. It was packed, right? And around this sort of time, around 1992, bear in mind, this is April, we've got August where we're going to have the British Bulldog win the Intercontinental Championship. He's then going to go to WCW, right? The Bulldog is going to jump ship. That's your marquee. That's at that point, you know. The Nature Boy Ric Flair is going to jump over to WCW. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is already in WCW. The Junkyard Dog's already in WCW. Ravishing Rick Rude's already in WCW. These are names that wrestling fans that have watched the World Wrestling Federation over here in the UK will know.
Yeah.
So again, it always surprised me why they didn't capitalize it in the UK more than what they did for the World Wrestling Federation, because there was hardly any promotion.
To be fair, I think if you kind of look at the bigger picture, I think it was more of, with WCW, they didn't really have that interest in becoming a huge deal until Ted Turner came in, because it was Ted Turner that came in, and it's documented in a lot of the documentaries and whatnot, where you know, Eric Bischoff has only spoken about it, where Ted Turner comes in and he goes, what have we got to do to compete with the WWF?
Yeah.
You know, what are we going to do?
1995.
And it was like literally, right, well, they're having prime time. We're going to make WCW prime time. We're going to go head to head with Raw. They're taping their shows on a Monday. We're going live. And it was Ted Turner that was the driving force into turning WCW into a global phenomenon. And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to take over that mantra. He wanted to take over the top spot from the World Wrestling Federation. And, you know, for a large chunk of time, he kind of did that with the ratings in the Monday Night Wars. So I think it was the lack of interest, or, well, maybe not interest, but the lack of being bothered or fussed about whether they were the top dogs or not at that time. Because until Ted Turner came in, they didn't seem to be anyone that was overly fussed. They just did their thing. They were quite happy doing their thing and letting WWF do their thing. So,
like Jim Crockett and Dave Hurd, it's been well documented. You know, if you talk about Jim Crockett, Jim Hurd, that situation, it's been well documented. Eric Bischoff also has to take some credit for coming in and kind of shaking it from the ground up. But that's by the by, because that's setting the scene for where we are in the United Kingdom. The World Wrestling Federation is on satellite, and WCW is on terrestrial, just like now, except for the fact that the WWE is now on streaming and AEW is on terrestrial, is on ITV, Freeview and satellite. So it's got as much, if not more, than what WCW had back in the mid-1990s. Now, the UK Rampage 1992 featured 9 matches, kicking off with a dark match, which was the Danny Boy Collins facing off against Alan Kilby. Yeah. We kicked off with absolute legends, Danny Boy Collins. Yeah, totally. 11 minutes 53, Tatanka went up against Skinner. This is really when we kind of got to see a very early incarnation of Chris Chavez, the Native American Tatanka, still with the red hair, not long debuting within the World Wrestling Federation. We knew and we know now how big he got at his peak, but then unfortunately never capitalized on it following the heel turn.
Yeah, do you know what? I was always a big fan of Tatanka. I really did love it early on. I enjoyed it. You know, I was one of the very few people that actually loved his heel turn. I loved the more aggressive style that he brought to the table in the $1 Million Corporation. I liked it. I just feel that once the corporation started to phase out, it was finding that place for him, because he'd become so loathed by fans that absolutely loved him for his heel turn. It was very difficult to try and find a way of working that back. And as we know, he had go on to have some smaller stints in WWE sort of in the later years, never really took off. But it was a strange one because I thought he was talented. I thought he was a good worker. But I think it was that instead of thinking, all right, we'll take you off TV for some time, let's try and repackage you. Let's come up with some ideas. How can we breathe new life into the Tatanka character? Where can we, maybe turn your face again? How can we go about that, And it just never really materialised, as you said. And it baffled me, that one. And it was unfortunate because I thought he was a really good worker. I used to enjoy Tatanka.
I did. And one of these days we will talk more about the infamous haircut. Tatanka and Ludwig Borger back in 1993, because that, I think, is kind of when that whole Tatanka situation kind of changed. And we saw a bit of a different turn. But Skinner, Skinner didn't really ever achieve much in the World Wrestling Federation.
No. Do you know what? The only thing I ever remember of Skinner is WrestleMania 8 when he had that match against Owen Hart. When Owen Hart was the Rocket, and he started off by spitting the tobacco juice in his face and blinding him and going on the offense. And that's pretty much nearly the only thing I ever remember of Skinner. I remember, obviously, matches on like Superstars and that against, squash matches against local talent. I don't really remember much of Skinner, and apart from his appearance in Royal Rumble, because it was really not that memorable.
It's a bit like, Barry Windham is the Stalker.
Yeah.
What I mean?
Oh,
great worker, terrible gimmick.
See, those are the sort of things that used to make me angry with the powers that be, when you take someone like Barry Windham, someone who's a legit, and you just make fun of, the characters. I'd say the same with Terry Taylor in the Red Rooster situation, But
I like that gimmick.
So did I. It was a guilty pleasure, but I was angry because it was Terry Taylor, and I was like, this guy deserves better.
I always like the music. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
The music. Yeah. And the fact he used to come out and doing the head like a rooster.
Yeah, the little head cock. I love it.
I mean, seriously. Anyway, next up, the second one was a tag team match. It was a weird combination, this one, because it was the Legion of Doom, Animal and Hawk, facing off against Dino Bravo, the Canadian strongman, and Colonel Mustafa. Now, no longer part of the Triangle of Terror, of course, Sergeant Slaughter and General Adnan not really around anymore. Colonel Mustafa just kind of there, a bit like Dino Bravo. This isn't really much to talk about. 4 minutes 29, LOD went over. Yeah.
But it's a weird team, though, isn't it? The Mustafa, aka Iron Sheik, and Dino Bravo. That was a very, very weird team. And do you know what? The thing, it wasn't actually until I watched this back in prep for this that I realised Dino Bravo was still there at that time, because I thought he sort of left in 91.
So did I. Yeah.
So, and watching also, reminding me that coming up in, I think it's June or July of this year, it'll be the 2-year anniversary since Sheiky Baby departed.
Wow.
God rest him. Yeah. So, you know what? You were talking about Hogan. When Hogan was at Raw and got booed earlier this year, I would have loved if he had been a guest, was still alive, and had been a guest in the at that Raw, and if they had just got Kathy Kelly or someone to turn around and say, you see your old nemesis Hulk Hogan in the building, and just let Sheik run off, and let's see the old production having to mute the button. They might as well just let it go, because they mistime it all the time anyway. You can hear what's said.
They don't bother now, do they? When it's on the live stream, they just let it go.
Oh, they did it on Raw this week, because
on the live.
Yeah. Pat McAfee looked steady at the camera and told Gunther he could go F himself.
Oh, I haven't seen Raw because I was travelling.
Yeah. So and they managed to time that one just about right.
They had some advanced knowledge of that one. Now, one of the things that we talk about quite a lot on this show is card placement when we look at these type of pay-per-views or these type of special events. And this one had some very weird card placement. Because the third match was The Undertaker and Sid Justice, a match of two imposing figures. Now, bear in mind, Justice had just recently adopted that villainous persona, turning on Hulk Hogan. The match concluded with a count-out victory for Sid, which is generally a finish that serves to protect, both of the performers from suffering a clean loss. It suggested potential future plans for both within the organization. Sid ultimately left the World Wrestling Federation shortly thereafter and went back to WCW. And we all know what happened to Mark Calloway and where he went. But from a positioning point of view, were you surprised that this one was match number 3 on this card?
Yeah, I mean, I would have probably put it in sort of 6th, maybe 7th on this. And it was weird as well, like watching that. Well, I suppose you could call it a match. I mean, for 5 minutes, 15 seconds, it's painful where I can really call it a match. And that was, 5 years later, they would main event WrestleMania for the World WWF Championship. So it was a bit strange, but I look at it as might be controversial. Some people might not care. It was a glorified house show because
the Rampage?
it was a glorified house show. Yeah. So when you look at it that way, it's kind of like, I don't care like that much. If it had been a more significant pay-per-view premium live event, then you'd go, that's bizarre, really, really bizarre. But I do think it should have been on a bit later, maybe sort of 6th, 7th.
A bit like this next match. The fourth one on the card was for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. The Macho Man Randy Savage defending against the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Now, Savage was apparently nursing some sort of leg injury, but the match was still quite a competitive back and forth, which ultimately, saw Savage retain the belt because he wasn't going to be dropping it to the Heartbreak Kid at this point. But what's notable about this one, and we referenced this a few weeks ago, this was the final on-screen appearance of Liz.
Yeah.
That took place at a house show, domestic UK gate, and wasn't seen on American TV.
Yeah, I mean, not until the WCW day. Do you know, we've touched on the whole Liz thing briefly in a previous episode, and I'm actually looking forward to doing an episode on Elizabeth with you, because I think there's a lot to talk about, and as we said, she doesn't get enough mention these days and enough credit that she thoroughly deserves. It's a shame. I used to absolutely love Miss Elizabeth. It's interesting because I only remembered little bits and pieces of this show until I watched it yesterday, and how much of a treat is it to have Elizabeth and Sherry in opposite corners at the exact same time at ringside again. Like anytime those two, because you've got Sherry who is unpredictable, she's got the wrestling background, she's a great worker in herself, regardless of whatever she's asked to do. And then you've got the more fragile Miss Elizabeth, that's more of like a cheerleader, like in your corner there to encourage you, and she's there for her man and that, and it's that that dynamic between the two where I remember watching this back, and I did it again when I watched this back yesterday, is I was watching those two outside the ring a lot more because it's that waiting for something to happen. What are they doing sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it was a decent match. I again, maybe a bit early. Maybe I would have had this as the second to last match on the card. I mean, it's your champion. Could be main event. Unfortunately, obviously, because Davey Boy being the home hero was always going to get the main event spot, just like with SummerSlam 92, and that worked out well because it was an incredible match and best match of SummerSlam that year, so that kind of worked out. But
it is interesting though, because that was never always the case for Davey Boy Smith. Because if you think about the Battle Royal at the Albert Hall in 1991, that was the main event was the Battle Royal, right? So yeah, the Salazar Trophy, you knew they were going to give it to Davey. That was obvious. But if you then go to the UK Rampage of 1991, which took place a few weeks after WrestleMania 7, he was match 3 or 4 on the card against the Warlord.
Yeah.
So it's only in 1992 did he headline the UK Rampage. And then they were obviously testing the water. You know, they were testing the waters to see what the reaction was going to be for Davey in a main event spot before putting him into the SummerSlam main event.
I mean, this sort of show, you can experiment anyway. I mean, I would have just put him up against Savage. You know, I wouldn't have had it as a clean finish. Maybe, you know, it would have been, I don't know, like a double disqualification or something, like outside interference. Maybe Money Incorporated gets involved, or Shawn Michaels gets involved. You know, and then have, you know, a moment at the end where, you know, Savage and Davey could shake hands, sort of thing, like both looking a bit dejected. But then, you know, Bulldog just have his little, you know, moment with the fans and end the show. But yeah, I'm just wondering at what point did Vince stop doing the whole send the crowd, make sure you send the crowd home happy, and be like, you know, screw it, I'm Vince McMahon, damn it, I will do what I want and I will book it however I want. I don't care if you're happy or not. Give me your money.
Well, unfortunately, that was this past weekend at WrestleMania with Triple H. But, you know, I think we'll talk about that in a second. The one thing that really got me about 1992, we'll carry on with this Bulldog discussion in just a second, is the fact that for both of the Macho Man title defenses, they weren't main event. No. They were mid-card, even at SummerSlam. Now, what does that say in your opinion? I mean, this is the Macho Man Randy Savage
WrestleMania
against the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, WrestleMania 8, Savage, you know, against Flair wasn't main event. It was co-main event. I'm doing that again. And I'm doing
you are doing that again. You're doing inverted commas again.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, again, so... Yeah, basically the majority of the significant Savage matches of sort of 92 were not main event, even when he was champion. It was... Don't want to be controversial here, but oh well. I mean, people speculate all the time over Savage's relationship with Vince and the WWF around those sort of time of sort of like 92, 93 and 94 up until his departure. You know, was it Vince didn't see him as the big star anymore, and it was sort of like, let's put Savage, because Savage is he's a stable point in the company. He's one of the, you know, he was second biggest to Hogan if you take Warrior out of the picture. You know, we trusted him being champion. Let's have Randy carry it while Flair's on his way out, and let's see who we can work with and elevate, and that before we get the title off of Savage. Then obviously once Savage has served his purpose, it was let's chuck him on commentary until he decided he didn't want to renew his contract, because Savage, and rightly so, felt he could still offer a lot more in the ring. As we saw in WCW, he very much did that. You know, and Vince maybe didn't see that.
Have you heard this report that's been coming out it's been on some dirt sheets the last few days about, apparently Bruce Pritchard has come out and said now that in 1996, Savage approached Vince to go back to the World Wrestling Federation. And they had negotiations, they had talks. He gave Vince a monetary number. Vince agreed that number. The reason why he didn't go back, allegedly, is due to the fact that he didn't want to work a full-time schedule. And at that point, Vince went, no, everybody works a full-time schedule. So we could have, according to the news report and according to what's out there on the dirt sheets, we could have potentially have seen the Macho Man back in the World Wrestling Federation in 1996. If
we were to have had Savage back at that time, it would have to be very similar to the Savage that was in WCW, with that attitude, that almost, you know, the madness, the heel, Very much what he did. I think it worked well with the NWO. It worked well when he had the likes of Luger and Sting and that around him. It definitely, in my opinion, elongated his career at the time, considering, a lot of people expected Savage to be winding down at that point. I don't think it would have worked. It would have been interesting to see what the concept would have been, what the plans would have been bringing him back. I know it was talked about, Bret Hart, had made his comments about how he felt about the direction, what was going on with the company at the time, the things he wasn't overly keen about. It makes me wonder what it would have been like if they brought Savage back. I didn't. That's the first time I've heard that, to be honest. And that's kind of thrown me a little bit. I wasn't expecting that. To be fair, I don't think Savage would have had too much to complain about in WCW at the time. I thought, if anything, he was used extremely well for the most part.
Oh, I think for an old timer, for a part timer, that he was used incredibly well, and he was used as the figurehead of the organization. Yeah. We have really gone on so many different twists and turns throughout this. Let's get back to the card now, because next up was the 5th match of the evening, featured Virgil with a face mask going up against the Mountie. Let's move on. Next up was the Intercontinental Championship. Let's go back to this match. I mean, I'm not giving it enough credit. It doesn't deserve it. 8 minutes, 57 seconds. The Mountie, of course, went over Virgil.
The only thing I'm going to say about it is I hated the Mountie, but loved Jacques Rougeau. And as you know, and as anyone who knows me knows, I was a big fan of the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. You don't hear hardly anyone say that, but I absolutely love the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. But as faces and as heels, I loved them.
What was it about the Mountie? Because I loved that Mountie gimmick. I thought it was hilarious. And SummerSlam 1991 with the jailhouse match between him and the Big Boss Man, and the skits that they did afterwards. I mean, I thought the whole thing with the Mountie was hilarious. And when they paired him with Jean-Pierre Lafitte, with PCO as the Quebecers, that, to me, he was up there, even higher than the Rougeau brothers.
Right, so the thing he had with Bossman was my only favourite, the best thing they did as the Mountie. Right, that you can't argue with that. That was entertainment. That was good. I like that. When they put him with Jean-Pierre, I liked the Quebecers as a tag team. I thought the tag team division could have maybe been a bit better. Take nothing away from them. I thought they were decent. But for me, I just loved the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. I loved especially when they became heels, where showing that, the hugging and, the proper old school heel. Yeah. They were proper old school heel tag teams. And the entrance theme, my God, Jimmy Hart, you put out an absolute belter of a song. He did that twice though, didn't he? Because the Rougeau brothers were all American boys, all coming out with those little, American patriot flags, like the really small ones you put on the sandcastles. But it was the Mountie thing. I'm the Mountie. I'm handsome. I'm brave. I'm strong. Okay, quick. If you will allow me to just humour me for a second. Oh God! Here we go. Just a little story with the Mountie, a personal experience. Back in 2015, there was a convention they did in London, a WrestleCon they did in London, and he was there. And I was downstairs having about to have my photo done with Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and the Mountie decided he wanted to have a photo with Bret and Shawn with his Intercontinental Champion. It was the championship belt. It was a real deal. So they're standing there and they're having this nice photograph. Up on the balcony, shouting down as loud as he could, Brian Knobbs. Brian Knobbs, drunk Brian Knobbs, shouting out to the theme of the Mountie's theme song, "He's the Mountie. He's fat, he's bald, he's old. He's the Mountie," like literally changing the lyrics to it, to the point where literally Jacques was pointing up to him and said, he's like literally his clenched fist, and he's like, I'm coming up there at the moment. They've actually got security and staff telling Brian Knobbs, calm it down, like, or you're going to have to go. And we're all standing there thinking, oh my God, we're going to witness Brian Knobbs getting kicked out of this hotel in this venue. And, and then when I went to the bar afterwards, a few of us went to the bar for some drinks and that, Brian Knobbs was just causing all sorts of commotion, and honestly, it was absolutely hilarious. I had to take Jim Ross to calm him down. Because, Jerry Sachs didn't want to know. He was like, Brian's being Brian. My days, I'm not doing this, that sort of thing. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because it was such a hilarious moment. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So thank you.
Oh, you hear everything on this show, don't you? But maybe we do an episode on the best theme songs. That would be cool.
Got to be done, isn't it?
But you just can't. We can't play them because of copyright rules, which is annoying. But maybe we get. Joe Aguinaldo, I have a challenge for you, sir.
Oh,
can you recreate some of the theme songs? That would be cool.
Joe's just amazing, isn't it? Joe's just that would be something definitely that would be amazing. Hold.
Anyway, we're going to move away from the Virgil versus the Mountie and Jimmy Hart because, quite frankly, I think most people went to the concession stand. Match number 6 that ran for 13 minutes was for the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion. It was the Championship. It was the Hitman Bret Hart defending against the model Rick Martel. And, considering that Martel split from Tito Santana at WrestleMania 5 in 1989, I think when they went up against it was Strikeforce, wasn't it? They went up against the Brainbusters, I think, and he kind of just walked out. The model character had been around for quite a while. He really did kind of make it out like we'd never seen it in the UK before in the backstage promo. It was a very weird promo skit that the model did. You can't take anything away from Rick Martel, one of the true greats of the squared circle, and someone that you talk about, being lumbered with a maybe not so good gimmick and turning it around, to take that model gimmick and do what he did with it, and the introduction of the arrogance and the neutralizer, he did incredibly well with that. And this too, the first time I can remember seeing Bret versus Rick Martel go one-on-one for the championship, this was up there for me. It was a cracking match.
Yeah, I was just literally going to say the match of the card. It was, you've got two absolute phenomenal in-ring workers. And you're right about Rick Martel. He, it goes to show that if you can withstand being given a bit of a, silly gimmick to an extent, and you put everything you can into it to make it work and to make it an advantage as opposed to a hindrance, it goes to show just what you can do. Because I thought he did fantastic with that model gimmick. He really made it work. As silly as we talked about WrestleMania when we had the blindfold match between him and Jake Roberts, we said about how silly it was, kind of thing. But the rivalry, the build up to that match was brilliant, and it was partly not only to how good and intense Jake was with his promos, but how brilliant Rick Martel was at making it work from his side of things. And I'm going to say this, like we talk about Miss Elizabeth not getting as much credit as she deserves or get mentioned. Rick Martel doesn't get mentioned that much in the modern day, and that baffles me because he was a solid worker who for years was outstanding. I mean, for years he held the record for longest time in Royal Rumble. Before obviously that was broken years later, but for a good while he held that record. He was so much better than what I think anyone really credits him for.
I would love to know why Rick Martel doesn't have a Legends deal with the WWE or even why he's not in the Hall of Fame, because he is a character that even to this day they could bring him out a bit like Tito Santana. They could bring Tito Santana out, especially now with the AAA purchase. I mean, that seems to write itself, doesn't it? You've got Tito Santana coming out as the new commissioner of AAA. But these are two legends that were undoubtedly great workers. They were solid in the ring. They were fan favorites and also hated in terms of the model. But they've still got recognition. It really does surprise me why they don't bring them back out.
It does, and I think off there, there might be something to delve into and have a little look around to see if there is actually any reason why Rick Martel's not got a Legends deal or not been chosen for the Hall of Fame yet. But yeah, I could have quite easily seen Rick Martel in his model persona as being like a manager or a kind of a mentor. But when we've had people like Tyler Breeze, for example, in NXT, those sort of pretty boy gimmicks and everything where they sort of, love themselves, self-indulging over their looks and things like that, I think he would have made a brilliant manager. Or
you kind of take it one step further with the whole MXM collection, the Maximum Male Models with LA Knight, and Maxine and all that type of thing. It could have worked. Even to a degree, Rico Constantino.
Yeah, Rico's prime example.
It could have worked, but intriguing to know why. We have one more match left on this card, and that is the British Bulldog. We have two more matches on this card. The Repo Man facing off against Jim Duggan. Now, how the mighty have fallen. The Repo Man formerly 1/3 of one of the most dominant tag teams in the World Wrestling Federation pre-Legion of Doom, Demolition, now playing the Repo Man. Again, Repo Man.
I cringe anytime anyone ever mentions or references Demolition as a three-piece or anything after Act. I'm sorry. I loved Brian Adler, I loved Crush, post Demolition Crush. But yeah, how the mighty have fallen. And Jim Duggan as well. Jim at that point was just more about the fun, wasn't he? He was more about the hoes and the USAs, and we love Jim. Duggan.
I'm glad you quantified that a minute ago.
The hoe, yes. Obviously not Godfather.
It's a family. It's a family show, Stefano.
Yeah. The thumbs up with the those.
Yeah, right.
Those ones.
Lion-O.
Lion-O. No one will really remember this.
Jim Duggan won it in 7 minutes 14 seconds by DQ. There was a bit of a beatdown afterwards and everybody went home happy. Main event was it was a singles match. It was the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, facing off against one half of Money Inc., IRS, Urban L. Shyster, with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. It was 12 minutes 48. It wasn't the longest match on the card. That went to the World Championship match at 16 minutes. It wasn't as long as Bret the Hitman Hart versus the model Rick Martel. That went for 13 minutes. But it was longer than Tatanka and Skinner that went for 11 minutes and 53. So it was the third longest match on the card. Everybody else ranked in around 8 minutes highest. 2 hours 33 runtime for this pay-per-view event. What's your take on this one? We kind of touched on it earlier on. In terms of a match, what did you think of this?
I think it was just to showcase Bulldog as, the hometown hero. It was one of those typical matches where it's like, Erwin will have his shots in. We'll have that little brief moment of, the hometown hero, the fan favourite, taking a bit of punishment. But it was what it was. I mean, still, apart from the fact that Bulldog would have been hometown hero and that's why he was booked to main event, I personally wouldn't have put it as main event. It's not main event caliber by any stretch of the imagination. And again, it was all about, as I said, at that period of time where Vince is like, let's send the fans home happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what it is. Now, that was the UK Rampage 1992. It was the precursor for what we would only have gotten just a few months later at Wembley Stadium for SummerSlam 1992. It's been talked about so often now by various different shows, including me, quite a few times. We're not going to do that again. If you've got to rank it, it was a house show. If you've got to rank it out of 10, what are you going to give it?
3.5.
Ooh, ouch. That's harsh.
But there's nothing that really stands out as memorable. There isn't, you know. But for a house show, and the fact it was in the UK for its time, you know, that I'll give it a 3.5. It's, you know, it served what it was. You know, it's, as I said, the only reason why we remember any of this is because we've had the VHS tapes. It's in the vault. It's been on the network, so we've had the chance to revisit it. But apart from that, you wouldn't overly remember it.
Do you know what's really interesting? And again, I would love to find a reason why. If anybody knows this, please let me know. The WWE Network and the WWE Vault have never released the 1991 UK Rampage. They released the World Tour 89-90. They released the World Tour 91. They released the US Rampage and Rampage 91-92. And they released Battle Royal and the Rampage 92-93. But they have never released the 1991 UK Rampage.
Interesting.
And I'm fascinated to know why. Because it was released on VHS, it was released on Tag Classic by Silvervision over here.
Yeah, I've got the Tag Classics version.
But it's never been digitalized and remastered and put out on a streaming service. You're trying to Google it now, aren't you?
No, I'm seeing if there's a legit reason.
It's just fascinating to me. It's like you're missing a piece of history, because that was Hogan Slaughter. That was the rematch from WrestleMania 7. It was The Undertaker versus... no, it wasn't The Undertaker.
Right, Okay. UK Rampage was broadcast live on Sky B's channels, Sky Movies Plus and later Sky Sports. It was not recorded or archived in the same way as a pay-per-view event or a weekly show. The WWE Network primarily featured archive content, including past pay-per-view events, weekly shows and other programming that was originally recorded. Since UK Rampage was a live event, it was not archived for future viewing on the WWE Network. While UK Rampage 1991 was not available, the later UK Rampage event from 1993 was added to the WWE Network back in 2018.
But it was released on home video and DVD.
Yeah. So I don't get how that's the case, but that's the reason. That's what they've given. So
this makes no sense. That makes no sense. Oh, I'm going to look into this. I will be digging deep. So if anybody can find out why, please let me know. I might even have to get Mike to ask Mr. Meltzer if he knows the reason behind this.
Yeah, but that's that's got me stumped, because I'm reading that. That's the reasons why they've get what they've given. But as it is on. I've got it on Tag Classics anyway. Yeah. But it doesn't make sense as to why. So, I think, Mike, obviously I know you're going to be listening to this. Yeah, please ask Mr. Meltzer or anyone else that you know that may know the answer to that, and let us know, please, because Andy and I are extremely stumped and confused as to that response. Because
actually, in all fairness, the 1991 UK Rampage is actually a pretty good event.
Yeah.
It's not amazing. It's better than 92. It's definitely better than 1993. That was awful. Oh, we will do that one week. Right, that's it for us. We're just kind of looking at trying to work out why the 91 Rampage isn't on. That's it for us. What did you think of the WWE Vault? Because that's the first time, I've properly used it for this. I think my one thing about it is so many adverts. But that's my issue with it. It's I can't. I'm not really watching anything on the Vault at the moment in terms of the pay-per-views and that, because the ads drive me absolutely mad. I'm lucky because I've got physical copies of most of the shows on there, so I can go and watch those whenever I want uninterrupted. So that's thankfully that's okay. But UK Rampage 1991. It's on the Tag Classics with the Battle Royal at Royal Albert Hall. It is
bizarre.
And if you get it on eBay, it's going for about £200. It's expensive. So if you want to make some money, mate, sell it. Right.
Well, there's actually one on eBay right now for £37.25.
Oh, I might pick it up. Right. That's it for us for this week. We'll be back next week with more Legends and Champions, talking all about the golden era of professional wrestling. Don't forget, if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on Celebrate Wrestling, you can do by heading to the Facebook page and the Facebook group, which is Celebrate Wrestling. Answer some questions, because that's what Meta tells us we've got to do, and Mike will let you in. I've said all of this at the top of the show. This Saturday, I was going to say Stefan, because he's been on every damn show since he's joined the network. Mitch and Dimitri will be back with the alternate commentary table this Saturday on the podcast feed. Mike will be back with Mr. Meltzer on Sunday for McGuire on Wrestling, episode 103. And we will be back with Legends and Champions, episode 29, next week, where we will be talking about one of the greatest wrestling divas of all time, Jordynne Grace. No, we won't. We'll be talking about Trish Stratus. That's next week's show. We'll see you then. Stefan, any last words for you? No? Good? Okay. See you next week.
Oh dear, and he wonders why I'd love to super kick him through a barbershop window. Anyway, again, thanks to everyone for tuning in, and just catch up with everyone as well, because everything's just going fantastic at the moment for Celebrate Wrestling. So, just keep it going.
Awesome. That's it for us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.